Ladies and gentlemen, friends of all ages, welcome back to the Cross Commission podcast. It has been 12 days since we last recorded when we did our season preview pod, and a lot has happened since then. A lot of consternation, a lot of discourse, if you will. It's been a pretty hectic week and a half in college lacrosse, and we really haven't had a full slate of games yet. And we might not have one until next weekend, though it seems uh, things are at least maybe a little more positive for games to happen this week. So to break it all down with me, the everybody's favorite topic of winter lacrosse and the season calendar, and hopefully eventually maybe we'll have about 10 minutes left over to talk about some lacrosse games, is Safe Fakada.
Jake, absolutely. Well, always great back to be on the mics with you. I was going to say, definitely, I'm in the clique likes as being one of the proponents of always as early as it can be. Yeah, January, sure.
You got high off your own supply. You got those. We had a decade of those 40-degree days in January, and you're like, what could go wrong?
It's like in that movie Margin Call with Irons, where he's like, we just can't help ourselves. It's just. It was so much success. I'm like, yeah, great games. And there was a couple of years where like it wasn't really warm, like February, where I was like, I look great. I just remember a couple of years there was like a snowstorm in like March. I forget, it was like maybe like pre-COVID or like right after COVID. But I remember the couple. I was like, hey, you can never tell with the weather. So, but yeah, I've been over it. I mean, just walking back and forth from work, the snow just won't melt. I'm like,
No, not one
it's
bit.
it's not going anywhere. I was, those funny like reels of like people using propane like tanks to like burn off the snow. I was just like, listen, maybe like let's just get rid of it. But yeah, no, it's been an interesting week. Obviously an evergreen topic about the start of the season. Been definitely boosted by the realities on the ground for most of the Northeast and even like Midwest is definitely getting pretty cold. But yeah, it's not just the snow; is the absolute frigid like temperatures for like.
That's the problem right now. I mean, the snow is like teams. We saw Hopkins play with snowbanks, up to the seats on Monday. It's the cold. Last weekend. I mean, I think travel maybe made things difficult last weekend, but the roads are pretty much fine now. Your problem is we're looking at. I mean, look, it is really, just been like custom built to throw a curveball into the lacrosse season and make everyone talk about this. Last weekend was the end of one cold front. Like it lasted long enough. What was it? 10, 11, something, 12 straight days of sub freezing temperatures, but not just sub freezing with significant wind chill.
Mm-hmm.
And then we finally have got it warmed up a little bit this past week to 35, something like that. And now we're going to have a cold front moving in again on Saturday morning, which is going to drop the temperature, with the wind chill to like 0 degrees again. And so we've just had the same problem. The same problem has been created once again. Good news, I guess, if you want to say it in to some way, is that a lot of we don't so far. I don't believe we have had any cancellations this weekend. We did have some cancellations last weekend, which was unfortunate. Navy High Point, Georgetown Loyola was postponed to March. Towson UNC got canceled. That was unfortunate. That looked like a good game. Maryland Richmond, we don't know. Postponed. Hopefully they can make it up. We'll see. So far this weekend, we have no cancellations and no postponements so far. Like everything is basically being moved to Friday, or in some games are being moved indoors. Binghamton Lafayette has been moved to next Tuesday, so that one's moved back. a lot of stuff has been moved. We have, just looking, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 games have been moved up to Friday, rescheduled from Saturday. We have Providence Bryant, which would be 2 o'clock on Friars Live. Love that the Big East is the Big East ESPN thing is like, it's like a house. It's like one of those. It's like a Russian nesting doll of, like, the Big East home games are all hosted by ESPN Plus, but it looks like for the non-conference games they can just do whatever they want. So Denver is still getting money from the Midco thing for non-conference games. Providence is just showing it on Friars Live. Georgetown looks like they're going with ESPN Plus. Anyhow, Delaware Drexel will be noon on God bless Flow Sports.
Still,
We got rid of Lacrosse. Lax TV is gone, but Flow Sports remains. Holy Cross Hofstra, 3 o'clock. That was just as scheduled. Fairfield Lehigh will be 6 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Iona Navy will be 12 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Monmouth Manhattan will be 1 o'clock. No stream for that one, it looks like. Mount St. Mary's LIU will be on NEC Front Row. That's rescheduled from Saturday. UMass Lowell Quinnipiac will be 12 p.m. on America East TV, rescheduled from Saturday. BU Siena will be 4 p.m. on ESPN Plus. That's a reschedule from Saturday. And then a couple games. The big one, Duke Utah, will be 5 p.m. on ACC Network on Friday, but that was originally scheduled for that as well. The other kind of adjustments, your biggest game, NCAA tournament, like ramifications-wise of the weekend, is Army Rutgers, which has been moved indoors and no fans. And it will be broadcast on BTN Plus, I believe, but it'll be a single camera stream. So, yeah, enjoy. It's a big game to be played indoors, no fans, and a single camera stream. Army hasn't played.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just saying, Army. That's 2 weeks in a row. Army's indoors.
And it's just so funny. Like the indoor games, like, God bless them. I'm just trying for you even broadcasting. We've seen. You remember we joked around like the Albany Maryland game was just like a cell phone like smuggled out of like Kosovo or something. Like, it was just like horrible. Like, but the quality, but it increases the anxiety because like we're so used to the shot clock right there.
Really, it's uncanny valley. It's like the Polar Express.
Oh
something.
yeah,
it just feels weird.
I was joking around like back in the 80s and 90s, the sports producers were like, no, you have to earn to learn to score. You have to watch occasionally in a commercial. Like it is definitely a unnerving experience as just being able to watch a normal broadcast, even just like as you shouted out the great production at the Syracuse, I guess the Newhouse like school. I don't want to misappropriate who did it, but great Newhouse, footage. So. I was saying, we're blessed with, just like what we kind of expect. But sometimes we have to like do things on the fly in indoor games, the single cam, like, only when someone scores, you'll see the scoreboard. So it's just definitely interesting. But it is a huge game. We always say it's kind of a barometer, definitely for Rutgers. Years that they've done well, they've beaten Army.
Massive for both teams. I think barometer game for sure. It's both teams. It's probably Army's second biggest non-con game. It's Rutgers' biggest, toughest non-con opponent for sure. Pretty substantial. The indoors is it's just totally different. I mean, here's what I'll say. I don't think it changes results substantially. Like, I don't think one team wins because it's indoors compared to, outdoors. But I do think with the goalie factor. It's a total neutral kind of in a vacuum environment. The Utah Delaware one, the field looks so small. Looked like you could hardly like set up a ride or anything like that with the field size. I know that's not usually really an issue with some of these Big Ten schools. Rutgers, Penn State, Maryland's indoors against Loyola. I think those will kind of be more conventional. Yeah, the Utah Delaware one was so like cramped. So yeah, that's moved indoors. Ohio State, Cleveland State's have moved indoors. So Ohio State's indoors again for the second week in a row. That's 3 p.m. BTN plus. We should probably talk at some point the Bobby Van Buren injury,
Oh yeah.
which is a pretty devastating loss for the Buckeyes. Go ahead, Tiff.
Just before we leave Rutgers, like just on their page, I think they're also going to stream the. Both teams will provide a complimentary one camera stream, which obviously BTN, but will also be accessible via Rutgers Athletics Facebook page. So
free, okay,
yeah,
that's something. Maryland Loyola will be 2:30 on BTN plus. That game's actually been moved back, so it has a sort of free, kind of it's not going to bump up against Rutgers Army, for instance. I guess that's one upshot of this. The schedule's kind of been moved around a little bit through the first week. Maryland Loyola will have limited fans. I think they're like
our main thing about like moving the games around. Like, did you?
What you asked for?
Like, what did it cost? Everything.
Literally everything. Oh man. Yeah, the only one that I'm still Hopkins Georgetown, which Safe is planning on attending.
That's it.
Which is scheduled for 1 p.m. in DC, has not moved yet.
No.
And
but putting a marker in sand, Jake.
I hope so. I hope it's not like I hope they're not going to get to because here's the thing: the only alternative is to move that game up to Friday. I can't really see. I don't know where. Yeah, I don't know where Hopkins could fit that. They can't play the week after because they play Towson midweek. Georgetown's already got one game moved back with Loyola. So the only option I see is Friday, which I think would make sense if they could do it. But you kind of want to get that done ASAP. It's getting a little late now. It's Wednesday night as we speak, and that game has not been moved as of last check. So we'll see. I mean, maybe they play through it. I mean, both teams, I'm sure, want to play. It's a big game for Hopkins. Georgetown, look, they want to get started. They haven't played yet. They have one game pushed back. It's been pretty much 2 weeks of hype for the Hoyas since the word of that Maryland scrimmage came out. And I know the Hoya fans are raring to go. It looks like they got a good team. So we'll see. Penn State Villanova is also in the bubble. That'll be 1 p.m. on BTN plus. One Sunday game, Colgate's playing is going to Virginia. That'll be 12 p.m. on ACC Network Extra. So a lot of stuff being moved around. I think we'll continue to see it again. On a positive note, nothing canceled yet, nothing postponed. We have games. Might be an early checkout for some people on Friday to watch some of these games. So we'll see.
There's it's gonna be a wild game. We may have to hit the under because like there is potential. I'm just like zoning in at Georgetown weather this weekend. Potential like little snow showers on Friday night. But yeah, you're right about the already going to be cold, but at least mostly sunny. But it's supposed to be like 24 mile per hour wind. But I think if that's the extent of the elements, that there's no way they're going to move the game because I don't think either want to like lose this potential game, and then there's no really place on the schedule to move it. Georgetown probably just wants it. We got to get our first game started, to start the season. I think that they're just raring to go. And I think if it's just cold and windy, definitely not desirable.
I mean, it's just,
but they're going to definitely.
That's the exact reason all these teams canceled games last weekend.
But wasn't it? I mean, it was also the snow, like in the like. I mean, I think it was we're just off of the storm, and like I think everything was.
But I mean, the main thing that these teams cited was like dangerously low temperatures. So again, like maybe there were other components of the snow, but also, I mean, this is why is Maryland moving indoors? Because it's going to be like, why are these teams playing indoor games?
Let's put it this way: if Georgetown had an indoor facility, I think this would be indoors.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. No,
but just we don't, and they're like, we don't, so we either want to lose it, you can't really postpone it. Hopkins doesn't want to play earlier, because obviously they played the same schedule with Rob Morris.
I think Friday would be fine. I mean, it's what, 3 days from the Robert Morris game. The Robert Morris game, if we're being completely honest, was not exactly the most physically taxing. I don't know if there was a single hit in that game, like one bit. Hopkins looked pretty good. Robert Morris's effort was, I mean, that was rather poor. What's that? Well, I'll describe it. Wasn't a super tax. I mean, that game for Hopkins was over after the first quarter. Like, so I don't think it's the I think it's the worst thing in the world for Hopkins to play Friday. Like, and I mean, to what degree are you really like? It's not like Georgetown has any film you haven't already scouted that you've maybe done, in the offseason or anything like that. So
they're actually not too. I mean, at least 34 on Friday during the day. A little cloudy, but it could potentially be done. I mean,
get it done.
I got my train ticket. I guess I'm just going to lunch with my buddy. Like, instead of going to the game and lunch or dinner.
Safe, you might be the only person there. You might be the only person there.
That would be hilarious,
Safe, if you're one of the only, if it's like, single, like if it's under, like if we're talking like 100 people there, I think they should let you be on the Hopkins sideline.
Just
I think Milliman should like point you out and like tell you to come down.
Just a point. It's just a point, like, and a knot, like in the head of yeah.
It's like that. The
Ford versus Ferrari. That's just like I'll just take my hat off to Millman.
I think they should let you come down the sideline. Just be talking, just chatting up Collison during. I need a 4-goal day.
Paul Rabel in the same sentence? I mean, like, come on, like, let's go.
We're talking about it.
A lot of people are talking.
Oh man. All right.
Well, I was going to say during the COVID season, there was the Rutgers. I think it was Rutgers Maryland. It was kind of a somewhat big game, but I remember Chris was there too, and we did to get a little clip right after Rutgers goal. But yeah, it was sparsely attended. Obviously, different reasons, but always love to see the camera.
All right, Dave. To what degree do we want to talk about the season, moving things back, moving things not up? Can't move up any further. It's January 30th. Started January. The first lacrosse game was played January 30th. So you can't move it up any further. A lot of talk, a lot of ideas being thrown out there. It's a big time for ideas. How far in the weeds do we want to go with this?
I mean, we always kind of start from a point of like, obviously there's things people want. But really, at the end, it's what are the trade-offs? What are the consequences? And what do you have to potentially? The downstream, like kind of like second, third level. Obviously, at this point in time, everyone has some feelings of like, let's move the season. But I was like, if I'm looking at it like reasonably, as we always try to go for, I was like, there's so many competing interests in there, and not just like from the fans, like enjoyment of the games, but the coaches, their interests. Like I do think recruiting has a big role in college lacrosse. So like the idea of like detaching the Final Four multiple weeks into June, I just don't really see. I don't really see like a March 1st or even like mid-March official start date. Just because, like, I think that too many stakeholders would have a significant change. I think what we need to look for is like, what is the most reasonable amount of change you can get that most of the stakeholders could like ascribe to. So, I mean, I love, I've for the longest time in this pod, I was always like, had no problem with early February starts. But I get it. And maybe this was like once in a 10-year type event, but it reasonable people can have questions about like, hey, this is deleterious to the sport. So, but I'm thinking like, where would I start as a baseline with you and me? I was like, I think, and I'm cool with like having an official start date and everyone start at the same time. But we're going to do that. Valentine's Day, mid-February is probably like the farthest part that you could push it, where everybody who's like has a big stake in this will be like, okay, that's a pretty reasonable take.
Yeah.
And we could do that because we've already kind of pointed out multiple times, but in the run up in our previous, like Princeton's a great example. Like they're playing plenty of games. They got a conference slate as well, but like they got a good amount of non-conference games. You can pretty much have a 14-game, 13-game regular season and still not really like change much. Mother's Day, early February, early May, have the Selection Sunday. Still have the Final Four as a part of integrated with like Memorial Day. I think you and I may talk about a little bit like maybe detaching the championship game. But I think like if you were like, hey, everyone should start at the same time, it's just better for the sport to like have it out, not in January, or at least you're exposed to potentially having this at the height of winter. I think Valentine's Day, mid-February, like the President's Day, that'd be kind of maybe that kind of like synergy, or maybe it's not the right word here, but like President's Day to Memorial Day, that's like kind of lacrosse season. Like I could see that, like being catching on and something that people could agree to. But yeah, mid-February is like if we are now at a point where like 60, 70, 80% of the people are like, we should all kind of start at the same time. It should be a little bit not in January. I was like, if you're going to get people to like kind of sign on to that mid-February, President's Day, I think like kind of could be like a reasonable like thing that everyone does. Pretty much with the Ivy, what they do. Everyone just start at that same time. I think you can get that. Maybe there's some pushback for some reason for some coaches who maybe in the South who were like, we have pretty decent weather. We would like to start a bit earlier, but I think if you have the core amount of teams up in the Northeast, like let's maybe like kind of cater to the realities of what life is like here and the potentiality of like that extreme outlier cases like we had, with this storm. Yeah, mid-February. I think we can get everybody to on that board, on that train.
I think look, this didn't happen at once. We didn't start playing games January 30th overnight. The season didn't move back from March 1st to, the first weekend, first Saturday in February or last Saturday in January, whatever it might be. That didn't happen in a day. So we're not going to move the season. We ain't getting the season back to March 1st if that's what you want. And I think in a perfect world, that would be the best solution. But that's not going to happen it ain't going to happen tomorrow. Like we're not going to be starting March 1st, 2027 next year. It's not going to happen. I think it's worth kind of looking at examining the timeline of this. So I'll use Johns Hopkins' schedule as an example of this, just because they kind of stuck to March 1st. Like that was always when they started, was March 1st.
Yeah, Princeton game. Yeah,
Princeton game.
There's the pressure where we started creeping into February. Absolutely.
Yeah. So 2003 Hopkins, 2002, all to the early 2000s. It was Princeton that first, March 1st, whatever it might be. 2005, the 2005 season, they started against Princeton March 5th. 2006 is when the first change begins to be made. They played Albany February 25th. So they moved back one weekend, essentially, in 2006 from where they had been prior, which was that weekend. 2007, Albany was February 24th. 2008, they played them February 23rd. 2009, they played them February 20th. So you start to see now kind of a move to that third Saturday in February. 2010, February 19th against Manhattan. 2011, February 19th against Towson. 2012, February 17th against Towson. So again, the kind of third Saturday in February. 2013 is when it really accelerates. They go to February 8th against Siena. basically the second Saturday in February. And that's where it settles up until 2000, I want to say just pretty recently, 2022, when they started February 5th. So over a course of about 7 years or so, within a decade, but still, like 7 years, Hopkins went from playing March 1st to playing February 8th. They went from the first weekend of March, first Saturday of March, to the second weekend of February. About 3 weeks. They progressively moved up, a week every couple of years. So that gives you an idea. It didn't happen. They didn't go from playing March 1st in 2006 to 2007. They were playing February 8th. They didn't start on this most recent day until the past couple of years, which is kind of generally when it's been happened. That whole week 0 thing was predominantly because it was mostly just Southern teams. Up until after COVID is when we started to see that first Saturday in February date really kind of proliferate. So I think that gives you an idea of, the timeline. It's changed, things don't move that fast. And I've said this, I think these coaches are resistant to change in that regard. And I think, look, Joe Amplo talked about this. He did an interview, and he said, look, when I played in college, our practices didn't really start until right about now or a little bit later, and we played in March and we finished on Memorial Day. What did we do? We played weekdays. We played midweek games. But the coaches, he said, have slowly over time become more and more resistant to playing midweek games, and they don't like playing them. He said the players are fine with it. I think it depends kind of on who you ask. I think you hear from some players and they're totally cool with it. I think you hear from other players and they're probably like, yeah, I prefer the full week of rest. I do think it's the coaches are more the one who are pushing the, not playing the midweek games. And I'll get into this. I think this is particularly a last decade type thing. The conference era of college lacrosse has brought a lot of good things. I think it's also brought some, as you said, trade-offs, negative things. I think one of those is the way that these coaches have kind of, I guess, prioritized these conference games, which I think is understandable, definitely to some degree, but also I think to another degree is just kind of like they've sort of gone a little insane with it. It's made the calendar far more inflexible. Let's say that. With the Big Ten's the biggest example of this. You just can't play Big Ten games anywhere other than the last 5 weekends of the season. Now you've added a 6th weekend because the conference tournament includes every team, and they don't want to play midweek games during that time period. So, and Amplo's point was like, coaches don't like midweek games, and he said like he'd be willing to play them, but his point was, if I'm not going to be the only one, basically, if all of us want to agree, we can, as you said, let's all agree, push it back, and if you want to play 13, 14 games, you got to play some midweek games. That'd be great. But I think which is understandable, there's probably coaches who would be willing, who are like, why the heck am I going to do this if nobody else wants to do it? So I think that coaches they hate midweek games. And right now, the way the calendar is set up, they do not have to play them. They could play 14 games the way it is right now without playing a single midweek game. So, yeah, why not do it? Or they could play something like 13, something like that.
We essentially have 10% of college lacrosse already doing this, right? 7 Ivy teams and Notre Dame.
Yeah, I think you got Marquette in there too, a little bit.
Yeah. So you already got them from default. So that's like pretty a good part. I think if the people really want this to happen, like this is the scenario. They just feel like, even if it doesn't happen every year, if it does happen, it's so disruptive and is only
I think that's
teams that have the indoor facilities that can accommodate for these things, which is not really feasible for too
who
many.
wants to do that anyway? Like, is this really? Are you? How much are you learning about your team in these indoor games? I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. But so here's the thing. I think your point is: do the coaches view it that way? Do they view it as much of a hindrance as they apparently do view playing midweek games as a hindrance? I think that's the calculus right now.
That's exactly it.
Like, do they think that this is losing 2 weekends, or do the athletic directors or administrators at these schools who are seeing home games be closed to the public or can't have fans in there? This was my thing with, when there was like Clark made a suggestion about like a neutral site type deal in warmer weather, whatever it might be. My point was, like, at the end of the day, these are still home games. I mean, and people still show up. In some places, it's not many, but in some cases, look, at Loyola, they could play Maryland and Hopkins in a freaking typhoon at Ridley, and it could be raining cats and dogs, and they're still selling that place out. Like, they're going to show up at Ridley to watch them play Maryland and Hopkins. So telling them, like, yeah, sorry, guys, we want you to play, Loyola wants you to play the Hopkins game, the Charles Street Derby in Naples, Florida. Like, no, I don't think that really works. There are people who still, get 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. Like, is that ideal? Is that necessarily what we want? Maybe not, but like, it's still home games since people still show up. So, is administrators losing that, having to devote personnel and manpower to clearing off these facilities and getting them ready in the face of all this kind of bad weather? Do they view that as more of a headache than just being like, hey, what if we started 2 weeks later? Because look, the NCAA is not going to. The NCAA doesn't care. Like, the NCAA got asked, hey, can we play January 31st? And they said sure. And if the coaches went and the schools went to the NCAA and said, hey, we want to play February 14th, they play February 14th. That's when it would start. The NCAA does not care. So it's going to be up to, do the coaches view this as more of a, is this more, impactful and more of a harm to their team than played midweek games? I think we're going to find that. I think having this happen a second week, I do think has probably changed a little bit. I think if it was just 1 week, maybe we could write it off. Now we're getting into 2 weeks. There are teams, Penn State is going to play outdoors for the first time against Princeton next weekend. Maryland isn't going to play an outdoor. Maryland has played, this will be Maryland's second indoor home game ever. Both have come in the last 5 years. They're going to play Cuse next week. They're not going to play outdoors until they play Princeton on February 21st or whatever it might be. Hopkins is a good example of this. If, let's say, Georgetown and Hopkins moves up to Friday, it'll be 3 or 4 weeks until Hopkins has like a normal set amount of rest before like a full week, of a game. They'll play Monday, Friday, Tuesday, Saturday, Friday. So like, I think this is, we always kind of, I think when we do this show, we kind of mark like the beginning of February is like, okay, everyone's had a couple of games now. The numbers, kind of have matured a little bit. We can get an idea for who these teams are after a month of the season. I don't think we're really going to have that this year until into mid-March, just because of, you're not really going to have what you would view as kind of like, I don't want to say ideal conditions necessarily, but conditions by which you can really judge your team. For some of these teams, they get Army. Army's been indoors now 2 weeks in a row. Rutgers played in Florida and then is playing indoors. The last 2 weeks. So it's been really weird, and I think it's going to push back kind of these coaches being able to make a proper assessment of their teams. Go ahead.
No, it's like, if we want to be part of the solution, I guess being part of the media, we should hold off on the first poll after the preseason to maybe mid-February or like late February. If like, I think part of the reason of starting the season earlier, like I do think, like, with the you kind of get set into a position. You know what I mean? Like the more games you play earlier, you kind of do move yourself up. I know polling isn't what determines you getting into the tournament at the end, but it's just like I think part of like narrative or like how teams are settled in the landscape. But like I think if media like was like, hey, yeah, there's a consensus at least with the media, like to like we need to move this. It was like one thing to like help do that. I thought IL did a good job with that. It was like, hey, let's not have a poll at the last weekend instead of, and it was like, yeah, it's a good call. There's not enough games. There's too much disruption. People moving around. They're not really. I think you're right. You're about like a replacement level game. Now, a lot of these teams are not going to have that for a little while. Meaning, just like decent enough conditions that you can play outside. In the Northeast, so yeah, I think that could help push that too. Like, oh, let's not do the official first poll of the season. Maybe have to change how you stylize it. It won't be like week 1, week 2, but like or just first media poll, second media poll. As the weeks progress, and like that doesn't happen until February. That help. Like I said, it's all kind of like a slow shift. Things change. You can't like your point is exactly right. No one's going to have March 1st like next in 2027. It's just not going to happen. Like,
I think we'll see. It's going to be up to. I think there will be discussions about this. Will it happen next year? Maybe, maybe not. They did do the shot clock pretty quickly after 2023, so maybe they could turn around. I think Valentine. I think that second weekend of February, or it would be in weekends where that they play January 31st. The calendar falls like that. The third, pushing it back 2 weeks, I think is a good start to where we want to go. I think you get yourself out of most of the damaging weather. There's always a chance, but when you're starting like last weekend of January, or like you're really just sticking your thumb in the like eye of the weather. You're like by that point in February, you're moving outside of it. There's less of a, especially more recently, like snow February has just not really been a thing for a long time now. We used to have snow in March sometimes. That's not really a thing anymore, at least in the Mid-Atlantic kind of area. Northeast maybe a little different. So I think that's a good start, and I think it's a good start because, as you've kind of alluded to, and we've tweeted about this, it basically just sets you up to do what the calendar is now. You just have to get a little more flexible. If you want to play 12 weekends, if you want to play 12 games, Maryland plays 12 games, Notre Dame plays 11. You can easily do that in like you can do you can go from February 14th, which will be this weekend, through the week prior to the NCAA Selection Sunday, and you can do that in 12. That's 12 Saturdays. You have 12 Saturdays to play 12 games. The Big Ten, as an example, would have to get rid of the whole 6 teams in the conference tournament. I'm going to say it right now, they should do it. It's stupid that that's still a thing. Like, just get rid of it. You don't need 6 teams in your conference tournament. Or if you want to do that, do what the Patriot League does and play a Tuesday. If that's what you want to do that. But you could do 6, you could do 12 Saturdays from then to the week prior to Selection Sunday. And then that gives you the 13th Saturday for the conference tournaments, and boom, and we're off. And what that gives you is, for example, I just did this with I'll do like I did with Maryland schedule, for instance. That gives you 2 late April this year for them, 2 late April home games, and it also gives you a regular season game in May. So, for instance, Maryland Hopkins would be May 2nd. I think that's pretty. I think getting half of everybody, like there being a regular season game in May, I think it's pretty awesome because I think it guarantees that it guarantees pretty much everybody plays in May, which I think is awesome. I think that's what you should want. You should want everyone to play May. Everyone gets a chance at a home game in May. I think that's awesome. You play 3 games in February. Like, let's say you want to play 12. You play 3 games in February. You play 4 games in March, and you play 4 games in April plus a game in May. That shifts the balance compared to where we are now, where you're playing, 1 game in January potentially, 4 games in February. That's 5. you've played 9 games before April. Like, that's it. In this scenario, if you push it back and you play 12, you will have played 7 games before April, and you can play 5 games after. Again, is it super ideal? Maybe not. I think we all like that balance to be more towards the, April end of it, but we're almost 50-50 is pretty good. And if you would like to, and if you, let's say you want to play, you think you said Princeton plays 14. All right, here's how you can do this. You can play a midweek game later in the year if you'd like, or you can play a midweek game that first weekend after February. Maybe you play a midweek game March, or you could play one midweek game and you could double dip one weekend, play 2 and 3 days. Duke's done that in the past. Quite a few different teams have done it. That gets you to 14. If you want to do the old Duke schedule, playing like 16, 17, all right, guess what? Not a lot of people do that. If you really want to load up on games, you're going to have to play a bunch of midweek games anyway. If you're a team who wants to play more games. If you're Notre Dame who wants to play 11, you get perfect. You can have a bye week in there. And hey, let's say you're a team who's like, we don't want to play 12 Saturdays in a row. Okay, don't. Schedule a bye week and schedule a midweek game somewhere. Trade off, or schedule a double dip somewhere.
Absolutely.
I think that's the most easy solution, is to start there. You start after the Super Bowl. If you want to talk about, kind of like interest level, things like that. You start after the Super Bowl. You still get, when's the Final Four? Like that first Saturday in April. You get still 5 or 6 Saturdays after the Final Four. And you're pretty much, in this scenario, the Big Ten would start conference play April 4th, which is the Final Four Saturday. So you basically, instead of having people jump in like, yeah, we played half of conference play is done and basketball is just ending. How about basketball ends and conference play begins? Like,
much more visibility on the
yeah.
conference networks, because now we don't have to compete with the college basketball tournaments, games where they're like really high level, like non-conference games. So no, I love. Forgive me for 13 games total, but with a midweek game for Princeton, having just 12, as if you want to play the 13th, schedule a midweek. Like I'm looking at Hopkins. You're right. Essentially, if like the Loyola Towson game was,
I have Hopkins. Yeah, like right here. Hopkins would play. Towson would be February 24th. Loyola would be the last weekend of February, which at least that's better for that game. Like Navy would be the last weekend of March. Like that's, for a game that's kind of been hit hard by the, change in calendar, I think that's a decent, trade-off of like, you get Navy, which I know they all, like that's a game that matters to them a lot. You get to play Hopkins at Annapolis every other year the last weekend of March. It's not bad. It's maybe not what you want exactly, but like when did Hopkins used to play Navy? Mid-April?
Oh yeah, it was like nice, right in the
February 24th. So it's like, it was like the end of April. All right, again, it's not perfect, but it's a little better. And yeah, like Hopkins in this case would have 3 home games after April. With the way their schedule works out this year, they would have 5 home games after March 21st. I think that'd be, humongous for attendance. So again, it's not perfect. It's maybe not if you're a March 1st, especially for people who have been in the sport a long time, remember when it was played March 1st. Listen, I agree. I think it'd be perfect if we could start March 1st. But it's not going to happen. Will it ever happen again? Maybe. I don't know. But it definitely ain't going to happen overnight. So I think this is a reasonable start to, and I think it's also like you mentioned, we need to kind of, I think there's always 2 competing kind of conversations. Competing conversations, and they get looped together, which is the start date of the season and the end date of the season. And I think in some ways they're different conversations. Obviously, they're going to intermingle to a degree, but it's like we can move the start date of the season back without doing anything about the end date of the season. So like we kind of have to, decouple these things, I think, a little bit. Like the championship game being on Memorial Day is like I just think I think it's a fair, worthy conversation to have. And look, we've had that conversation plenty of times on the show. But it's also like it's a different sort of conversation, you know. Like it's more about this. I think is about what's best for the welfare or safety of the players playing on like what type of. We heard a bunch of coaches talk about like I listened to a lot of the Glenn Clark did interviews with all the like local Maryland area coaches, and I listened to a lot of those when this conversation was coming up, and a lot of them pointing out like, hey, it's probably not great just like playing on frozen ground in with like it's also with the equipment lacrosse has, like playing with like these sticks in 10-degree weather, like not a good thing. So there's that conversation. There's the conversation of I know John Paul, former Michigan coach, kind of made this like it just looks bad playing these games in February. Like it doesn't. You're not going to get people to turn out on campus. Even in the best case scenario where the weather is like fine, it's still not people want to go and be outdoors type weather. TV kind of does come into this play, but I just think it's the Memorial Day weekend is just like a different conversation. And I think we got to figure this part out first before we can kind of have that conversation. And also because there's nothing structurally impeding us from playing on Valentine's Day. There's nothing like what's stopping, or like again that weekend, that Valentine's Day weekend, that like 4 or 5 day window, whatever it might be. It's not this year. I think it's literally Valentine's Day, but it's not always going to be that. But it's around that time period. President's Day, the Saturday before President's Day, all that. There are actual more structural issues that are preventing the season from being moved like off of Memorial Day weekend.
Absolutely.
Once after the NCAA baseball tournament starts the Friday after Memorial Day. The Women's College World Series is like a week or two into June. So the NCAA, whatever we think of the 2 games in 3 days thing, I think everyone agrees it doesn't produce the best quality for the championship. I'm a Maryland fan, so trust me, I got a lot of thoughts on the 2 games in 3 days thing and the, semifinal into final, like I got plenty of thoughts. But that's how the NCAA does it. They do it for basketball, they do it for soccer, they do it for ice hockey, I'm pretty sure. That's just how they choose to do this thing, is the 2 games in 3 days. They seem wedded to it to some degree. Baseball even. I mean, baseball is different because it's a series, obviously, but like that's how it ends. It ends with like, a 3-game weekend, series. Whatever it is. So there are more. I'm not saying those hurdles can't be overcome, but there's more opposition I think you're going to run into about like let's move the championship off Memorial Day than let's push the season back 2 weeks. So I think that the conversations need to be, I guess decoupled a little bit. And again, it's not that, I heard. I think it was Scott Strassmeyer who works at Navy. When they have to do with Navy, he tweeted this out, and I thought it was a really good idea that I liked a lot, which was let's start that kind of February. Let's go through Memorial Day, and let's play the championship game Friday after Memorial Day. You're probably okay up against TV because most of the baseball regionals are like streaming. I think there's like 1 or 2 that might get television, but I think lacrosse could probably fit within that, window. You play the women's and men's championship games the Friday, maybe even in Annapolis, which I know is a popular idea for a lot of people. That Friday after Memorial Day, and I'm like, you know what? I think that's a pretty reasonable, like, is that going to give people everything they want? No. But basically, 2 teams get the season pushed back 4 days. Everybody else is still done when normal, and we get a more proper championship game. Get some actual rest before the championship game. And, it kind of works. I think that's you get an actual spotlight. I mean, you still have the spotlight on Memorial Day, but you kind of still get that Friday night, Friday evening, men's and women's championship games. It can be a big, I think it'd be great if you can have a week build up, or at least a couple day build up, before the championship games. People actually talking about it. as opposed to the way it is now, where championship's not an afterthought, but it is very like, there's just no coming off that Final Four Saturday. It's like you go down and then you like have the championship and then just keep going down. There's not a lot. There's not, I think, the build up you'd like for it as much as you'd like. So I think that'd be a good idea.
I see that. Could have the men's Final Four Sunday.
Could
Maybe
be.
the D2, D3 on Saturday. Maybe the women's title game Monday.
No, play both men's and women's title games Friday. Let's say
I meant the women's Final Four then.
maybe it could be, or you could do women's Final Four Friday, men's Final Four Saturday,
The
or
D2, D3 title
D3 Sunday.
Monday.
I mean, if you want to play Monday, maybe you could do it Saturday to Monday.
Because I think that could still entice. You know what I mean? I do like the NFL stadiums for Final Four, but like if you then have Navy come in as the permanent title game site for men's and women's Division One.
Also, go on, but
I was just saying that you can still kind of use the. I do think they like the potential for crowds above 35, potentially touching 40,000, and then if you have it like a title game weekend with men's and women's all like at that one NFL stadium, then the championship game for the D1 and D for men and women, and maybe that could definitely be really interesting.
Well, yeah, because it's like, what is the real draw? Saturday is the real kind of draw. Like, the attendance, not by a lot, but the attendance does go down Saturday to Monday. If you're giving them, let's say right now we give you, if you tie in the women's Final Four with it, we're going to give you like 6 games basically that weekend. I guess you're getting more than what you have now, which is where you have, what, I don't know, 4? You get like 5, something like that. So we're still giving you the men's semifinals. We give you the women's semifinals. We give you the D2 and D3. That's still going to give you, I think, 1 day of,
It is more of that value proposition that we used to say that made lacrosse propel to the 100K. Like it was a reasonable middle class like weekend, like with prices. Now you could maybe couple that with like, hey, get a package, all 6 games, and then it's just like, you get at least somebody who maybe go to the D2, D3 that maybe wouldn't have because it's like all part of it the whole weekend. And then, they have a daughter, let's go, or a son, let's go to the women's Final Four. And because, maybe we're going to go maybe for the men's game, but now we have this option of going for all.
And also, like, a lot of these, look, if lacrosse has, other sports don't, there is a big crossover in the teams that are, at the top. North Carolina is good at men's and women's lacrosse. Maryland is good at men's and women's lacrosse. Syracuse is good at men's and women's. Instead of like dividing everybody and be like, whereas the women's Final Four this year I think is in Northwestern, right?
Mm-hmm.
Men's Final Four is in Charlottesville. Like you're splitting. You could do better attendance at one site if you had everybody there, probably.
Absolutely.
As opposed to being like sending it off into different areas, and then you still get 4 to 5 days later, and what we talk about with Annapolis, the congestion thing, issue maybe. You go from 4, you still have maybe 4 teams, but you're only there for a day, or like you play it Friday. It's a little more manageable than having to keep everyone there for like the whole weekend, and it's a spotlight thing Friday night. So I think that's a pretty, worthwhile thing to look to do. Again, first, let's start with the beginning of the season, and then maybe we can think about that later. But I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, it's incremental change is what's going to have to happen here, and this is a reasonable start. Look, the weather looks pretty good next weekend. Like, I don't think I'm not saying we're done for the rest of the year, especially because, again, in some of the Northeast areas, you always kind of get those, like, isolated kind of things that pop up, and a game or two might get, postponed. That happens.
Watch Syracuse Hopkins get snowed out when we go there.
We haven't had a March snowstorm here in, like, I can't even tell you the last time. Or probably a decade. If it happens, that'd be insane. I think we're in the clear after this. But yeah, I mean, and again, it's all kind of set up for this with 37 today, 31 sunny Thursday, 31 Friday. Friday, I don't think the wind isn't too bad. Saturday literally drops to we get 20 mile per hour winds, gusts up to 42 miles per hour on Saturday. And then it's fine next week. So I don't know. It's like maybe the gods are trying to say something with where we start the season. I don't know. All right. I think that's kind of everything we have on that. Safe. What is your big kind of? What are you most looking forward to this weekend? What's your kind of one big thing? You're kind of looking at. Could be a game, could be a particular team, could be a broader kind of trend, anything like that. What's the thing you're really looking at ahead of this weekend?
I mean, we kind of touched upon, I guess, collapsing those topics into one. Yeah, Hopkins, Georgetown. Just being out there with the people. Me, Jake. I'll be there. Not in the press box. I'll be in the stands with the real people, the Americans, like a real American. But Georgetown, we've just talked about, throughout the preseason. I think both of us are pretty high up on them. We have them in our Final Four, and not being able to, but not being the Georgetown not being able to play Loyola last weekend, took a little bit away and kind of postponing the our first glimpse of them. Will be interesting. Hopkins coming after a game, obviously, that Robert Morris wasn't as challenging as the Colonials would have hoped. But at least I got a game out there with an opponent, of a different jersey that, unless, it's different than intense practices and actually game, against an opponent in the game. So definitely that's just my, start hold on account. Obviously, been planning this for a bit, once the season dropped and I knew Hopkins was going to play at Georgetown. It's kind of fun. Like I said, I went there 2 years ago with somebody who lives in DC area, so you're going to be able to see him. So it's going to be kind of, good time for that as well. So just in general, for myself as a person, as a Hopkins fan, the fact that I'm really anticipating, looking forward to seeing Georgetown play on all that. So and the game of the weekend, at least for me. That's my number one.
Let's look at the kind of history of this matchup. These teams started playing again in 2022. I think they played prior to that in the late 2000s.
I was gonna say, we kind of took a hiatus after they knocked out Pfizer in the scrimmage. Petro didn't play Georgetown for a little bit after that. Yeah, I was gonna say that was our potential 3-peat year. When we lost Pfizer, kind of messed it up. But sorry, but yeah.
No, the last time they played Georgetown in the regular season before that was. I don't think it happened in a while. I thought they played in the regular season, but they hadn't even played in. Wasn't even a regular season matchup during the early Petro years. So I think they played. I think they played.
Yeah, sorry.
I think they played in the tournament a couple times.
Yeah, the 07. But it was 93 was it was kind of weird, I guess, maybe because of Hopkins' independent status. Just didn't play each other, even though regional-ish rivals. Obviously, Hopkins Maryland is bigger, and Hopkins Loyola is bigger. But Georgetown was kind of a team, had some juice, the years. And then I think they were kind of trying to maybe start something. They had the scrimmage, like I said, after, and then Pfizer got knocked out and lost for the season. So. According to message boards and stuff like that, left a kind of bad taste in Hopkins' side, so they kind of just didn't play them ever or try to schedule again. And then the 07 tournament game, and then kind of rejuvenated in 2018. But that was also a tournament game.
Yeah, 2018. Yeah, that was the Kyle Marr. So 2022 they play. Georgetown beats Hopkins 16-8. The game's played in DC. That year Hopkins is 7-9. They missed the NCAA tournament. Georgetown, that's probably still the Hoyas' best team that they've had under Kevin Warren. They're 15-2. They lose in the first round as number 2 seed. Should have been a Final Four team that year, and they just missed that opportunity. 2023, Hopkins upsets Georgetown 13-12 at Homewood. That was kind of the big, like, even though, I mean, it didn't quite tick off immediately following that. But that was kind of one of those first, like, I think, kind of signs that Hopkins had of, like, back is not the right word, but of a turnaround. Both were quarterfinal teams that year. Hopkins was the 6th seed. Georgetown was the 7, I want to say. Yeah, I think they were the 7th seed that year. They lost to Virginia in the quarterfinals. 2024, the two teams played again. DC Hopkins won a tight one, 11-9. Both were quarterfinal teams again that year. Hopkins was the 3 seed. Georgetown was the 8 seed. Last year, Hopkins wins at Homewood pretty comfortably, 11-6, and then both these teams' seasons kind of diverge. Not immediately after that, but wind up going in opposite directions. Hopkins misses the tournament, finished 6-8. Georgetown rallies down the stretch, makes it to another quarterfinal. I guess what I'm saying, Steve, is I think for the first 3 years, you kind of could get an idea of these teams' paths based off that game. Georgetown won by a lot. Georgetown was the Final Four contender. Hopkins was out of the picture. Played close games in 23 and 24. Both teams were pretty much in the same sort of bucket that year. 25 is the outlier, where both teams' seasons go in different directions. I guess how I want to put it to you is, if this game happens and we're doing the power hour and you're coming back from the Amtrak and Georgetown wins by 6 or 7, there's the meme for you. Is your thought? What do you think your thought is about the direction of these two teams if you leave and Georgetown wins pretty comfortably? Does that make you less optimistic on Hopkins? Does that make you just more optimistic on Georgetown? Like, okay, like the hype is maybe a little real here. Where does that kind of leave you thinking about these two teams?
No, I love when you talk about like the winner of the game, like pretend to like especially if they win big, like they have a successful season. 2025 is a bit of an outlier. I mean, we're only talking about 4 seasons here, but like Hopkins winning that game and then Georgetown actually having the better season at the end, despite like Hopkins losing or Hopkins winning by like 5. If Hopkins loses by like 5 or 6 goals, like there's a part of me that will be like kind of almost as funny because like in 2022 that blowout win by Georgetown, like we really felt like, oh yeah, sort of.
Yeah, because the next weekend I think was they played Notre Dame, and they got up on Notre Dame by like 6 or 7 at Arlotta, I think.
Yeah,
and it was shit.
It was like it's actually happening. And then in 2024, I almost had the same thing. That was our legendary, 11-3 season. Calling it for the Jays, and when Hopkins won that game, I was like, yeah, it's on. Like not that they blew out Georgetown, but Georgetown still was like, kind of considered really big team. Hopkins made quarterfinals 2023, but like I think 2024 like really came back with like probably their best team under Milliman. So I was feeling it that year. I don't think it'll be a red herring. Like, I don't think if Georgetown wins big, like their season will like kind of collapse, like kind of Hopkins did last year. I think if they win, I'd be actually more by that amount. I'd actually be more impressed because first game of the season, they're all juiced up to play Little last weekend, like it's postponed. And then a pretty decent Hopkins team. I was like, they still. Well, the biggest thing I said like throughout the pod this preseason, I was like, I'd love to see Hopkins like kind of pop off. I need to see some more points and stuff like that. Again, Robert Morris probably left a lot to be desired, but it's like in terms of defensively. But I was like, if I kind of see that kind of juice or pop at Cooper, like I'll be happy with that, because I was like, oh, this is a team that's like, yeah, they're kind of found that their footing in terms of offense, and I think Milliman can always kind of figure it out with defense. That's your notwithstanding. And they'll be like kind of excited. But yeah, if Georgetown comes through after not being able to play Loyola last week, and then blows the doors off it, the Jays, I think it's just going to be like, oh, maybe 2022 redo. Like this is, potentially like a really special team for Warren. Hopkins loses a lot. Again, on the road, it could make whatever excuses I would like to make. Short win. Yeah, they're looking ahead.
We know you love that first road game safe, just like the built-in.
Yeah.
The first game on the road.
So,
all right, I'll reframe it. If this game is close, let's not even. It's a 1-goal game either way. Does that leave you more optimistic about Hopkins and what could happen, or less optimistic about Georgetown?
More optimistic about Hopkins, because again, I'll give Georgetown that leeway of like, this is their first game against a non-teammate, but the season. So like that's something I'll always give teams a little bit of slack on. But I would be ecstatic if Hopkins kept it close. They won. I'd be like, I'd be really stoked, because it's just like Georgetown's already like a top 5 on pretty much everybody's poll. Like, I would be really. I was like, especially if defensively they could hold Georgetown to maybe like under 10 goals. That'd be, even if they, if they lost like 9-7. I'm like, hey, on the road, just Georgetown team. Yeah, I'll play both sides. But yeah, it's our first game of the season. But I was like, hey, that still is an offense. The Connor brothers. We're talking about. So like, I'll feel much better about Hopkins than anything really about Georgetown. Like, I'll still like give a little bit of slack. I expect them to win, but I don't think like if they don't win by like 5 or 6 goals, or it's a close game as your fourth quarter, that I'm going to have too many negative views about Georgetown. I think I'll just be like, first game of the season, Jays team that's maybe be better than people are expected. Maybe for me, it'd be like, for the Jays, maybe it was the redo of 2024. If they keep it close or win, I'm like, oh, this is a team that's really going to outperform people's expectations. But I think Georgetown, if they win close, I think that's still not going to knock any shine on their preseason momentum. And if they win big, then yeah, maybe this is a really special Georgetown team. But yeah, if Hopkins keeps it close, I'll definitely just going to feel much better about Hopkins and not really have any. I'm not selling Georgetown at all.
Yeah,
I think
that's an interesting way to kind of look at this one, because I think you do have two teams where very different expectations. I would say Hopkins, it's kind of some cautious optimism, maybe trying to build back towards the tournament. Georgetown, this is like, at least certainly, I think the most expectations they've had since 2022. And it's kind of like, this is the year. It's hard to really spot a weakness on that team. I think like IO's doing their unit rankings, where they rank like all the different units. I think Georgetown defensively ranked in the top 5. I think if you ranked their specialty units, they'd be like Fogo, goalie. I think you'd have to rank them reasonably high up there as well, with Ross Prince. Anderson Moore as a junior, maybe is this a chance for him to take a leap? Then I think you offensively, I think this probably is the highest offensively that they would feature in a while too, with the Connor brothers. I know there's some kind of discussion amongst Georgetown fans about what they're going to do with where the how they're going to fit these guys in. I think, to me, it's not even like a question. Liam Connor as he's the guy at attack. I think you have to plug him in. As I know, Georgetown has some guys at attack who look promising. Jack Ransom scored 31 goals last year as a freshman. Kevin Miller, another freshman, showed some punch as well. Different guys. Joe Caesar had a strong year. But to me, you bring Liam Connor in for what we talked about, that he was the fulcrum and the hub of that Colgate offense and putting up 50-plus assists. Equally capable attacking the cage, passing the ball. He's got that combo with his brother, who's a big-time shooter. I think you plug those guys right in an attack, and you just say, do your thing, and you put these other, they've got, again, they have options like offensively. It's once you get past Carroll and Bayman, they return, like 8 of the next 9 top scorers. Like they got a lot of dudes here who like kind of similar to what Hopkins had there from last year. Of like we got some guys here who we know can play. Duda Main pops more towards the end of the year. Krogan has been around the program decent. Jordan Ray's been around, done some things. It's like they have guys who can. I think they got plenty of guys who can run through the midfield and be like, let's see what combo we like. At the attack, I think you need the like. This is what we got. We've got the Connor brothers. We know what they can do together. And as we talked about, they kind of solve what we need with losing Aiden Carroll, his shooting, and losing Bayman as our kind of main passer and orchestrator of the offense. Those are 2 huge, spots to replace. And you like that to me is, you just plug those guys in there and go. I think it's so you don't want to never look. Obviously, you never put too much into an early season game, and especially in this kind of weather. If potentially they play, it feels kind of poised to probably be more of a defensive game. But the offenses, I think, are kind of what I'm looking at here. Just because for Georgetown, I know what they've got defensively. I know Ty Banks back there. They're going to be Georgetown always is really strong in the middle of the field, the rope unit, going back to when they had guys like Zach Geddes. Like they're going to be a strong. That's just Warren. That's how Warren builds his teams from the back to the front. So I know they're going to be strong. I want to see like is the high end offensive talent has always kind of been what this team's been sort of missing. Is like that. They had it in 2023 with Dordovic when he got there, but then that was the one year that they didn't really have great goalie play, and that kind of sunk them a bit. Like I want to see kind of how the Connor brothers kind of fit in with this, and are they the type of really just high level offensive firepower that the Hoyas generally have been missing? Look, you go back to that quarterfinal game they played against Maryland. It felt like Georgetown could have played Maryland all night, and they weren't going to outscore them. Like Maryland kind of always kept them a distance. Meanwhile, for Hopkins, I do have questions. I have more questions about their defense than the offense. But I do think this is going to be a tough matchup for them on the offensive side of the defensive side of the ball. What Georgetown has, you've got Dash, Lamide, played fine against Robert Morris, but wasn't asked to make like any real saves. So this is in some ways his first like real game at the D1 level, and that's going to be tough. But I want to see more of, again, for Hopkins, the Robert Morris game felt kind of on the offense side of the ball. That felt kind of scrimmagey, to be honest. Like they had their shooters had time and room basically every time they shot the ball. It's like that's not going to happen against Georgetown. Georgetown's going to bring the physicality. They're going to, when they double team you, they're going to hit you with the intention of jarring the ball loose or putting a hurt on you. I just kind of want to see. They're not going to score 17 goals again. To what degree do we see kind of some of the things that carried over? Matt Collison had an awesome game. I think Quentin mentioned this on the broadcast that Collison's going to be a first round pick in the PLO draft. The question is, can Matt Collison be a first team All-American this year for Hopkins? Can he be a midfield of the year type guy? To what degree is he going to be assertive enough and kind of, play, but also like be able to look? Teams are going to double team him. To what degree can he, hit the pass, hit the open man out of the double team? What opportunities can Hopkins create for him? Hopkins shot the ball really well, and I thought they did a really good job whenever Robert Morris did double of hitting the open man, and I thought their spacing was really good offensively. But again, like this is kind of scrimmagey. Hunter Chevette, I think you saw the inklings for Hopkins, kind of the offense getting back to where it was a couple of years ago. Chevette as Garrett Degnan, basically. Like, can he keep that up? Like, can he be that kind of guy? Eiler had a very quiet, 4 assist type game. That's a lot of kind of what Jacob Angelis did, was just have a quiet, 1 goal, 3 assist type game. Can he do that? So, to what degree can they sort of? you can see the skeleton of the offense that they want to have. I thought from that game, it's not going to be that easy every week. Does that all fall apart against Georgetown? And it's just like, what happened here? Or even in a tough game, do you at least still see the resemblance of this is what we want to be, but we played like again, they could score 10 goals and lose, but I think you could still be able to be like, hey, maybe Collison had a hat trick. Like maybe we didn't look, they didn't turn the ball over much. Maybe they don't turn the ball over, maybe they're under 12 turnovers, something like that. I think even in the results, you probably could still see the idea of what they want that team to be. And I think it's how much of that can they carry over against what's going to be a much tougher level of competition. And same thing for Georgetown. To what degree does the offense flow through the Connor brothers? Anderson Moore again. I think he's a key piece for them. He's been really good, but I think there's the standard of Georgetown goalie wise. When you go back to like Owen McElroy is really high, and they play strong defense. Can they be super locked down on them? Like Georgetown, to me, defensively, they've been really good the past couple of years, but I know the standard for them is to be where Maryland and Ohio State are defensively. Like that's standard. They want to be like top defense in the country type, level. Be where Notre Dame is. And so I think they've been a little below that the past couple of years. It'd be interesting to see if they can kind of get back to that. My thing, I think there's just a couple of, again, it's early, so it's trends and things like that. I think kind of along these lines, similarly, just looking at a couple of teams and how much do they align, I guess, with my kind of notion of them, of what I think they could look at. So like Virginia, for instance, we're hearing about Brendan Millen being given the keys to the car at attack. And we're hearing about McCabe Millen being at moving back to midfield. I think that's something that makes a lot of sense for Virginia. I think McCabe needed to be in a position where he just didn't have the ball as much, but he could focus on doing what he does well. He's got a great shot. I think he just took too many bad shots last year. He is a guy who can dodge, and he's got athleticism. I think midfield's a good spot for that. Look, Brendan Millen was my freshman of the year pick. I've been high on him for a while now. I think, can he give that Virginia? Do we see kind of like when we talk about Hopkins? Do we get an idea of an identity for Virginia's offense, which it really felt like they were missing last year? I don't. When you watch Virginia, and Steve, you and me talk about this a lot when we did the conference preview a couple weeks ago. It's been hard to kind of identify a Virginia identity on offense the past couple of years. Like I don't know what exactly they are trying to be. I knew what they were with Kerwin, in that it was we have our guys and we have like Connor Schellenberger is going to do his thing, and you're going to have to stop him, and he's going to hit Xander Dixon, he's going to hit Peyton Cormier, and then while you're all focusing on that, and we're going to attack you from the inside, here's all these midfielders who can just run by, like straight up, like just clear it out. We've got the better dudes. Can you hold up against us for 60 minutes? I don't really know. I haven't quite been able to, since Kerwin left and they lost a lot of those pieces from the 21, 22, and 23 teams. What is this new Virginia offense's identity? And so that's something that I'm kind of intrigued to see. How much do they kind of fit within what we expected? Along those lines, Maryland. I mean, it's hard to say again. It's an indoor game. It's their first game of the year. But when you look at this team top to bottom, it's really hard to see any weakness. Not only just like any weakness, they appear to be potentially great at every spot on the field. Like I mentioned, Iowa was doing those like unit rankings. They had Maryland ranked as the number one defensive midfield unit, short six, long six, face off, all that. Yeah, I agree. I think they probably have the best group there. Defensively, I think Iowa had them ranked number one. Like, yeah, I can agree with that. I think Will Shower's the best defender in the country. I think Peter Lake, who played more as a number 4 pole last year than most teams' number 4 poles do, is going to be their number 2 now. I think he fits in there. Offensively, I mean, if you look at their attack unit, if they run Eric Spanos, Leo Johnson, and Chris Lyons at attack, I mean, Chris Lyons scored 60 goals a couple years ago for Yale. Leo Johnson has put up big numbers. Eric Spanos has been All-American type level player, like on the outskirts of that. Midfield, they could run Braden Urksa or Chris Lyons out of the midfield. That's pretty really enticing. And you still have young guys like Jack Schultz, who popped as a freshman last year, Elijah Stobalt. They got a lot of like 5-star young guys like with talent kind of percolating. Maryland's always good, as we know, and they always really hide their weaknesses as well as anybody, and they do little things well. This is the first time in a couple years where you just look across the field and it's like, okay, like they could be better than everyone they played at most all spots on the field. In 21 and 22, when generally when Maryland is this good, like you kind of see it. Like they hit the ground running, and like that Loyola game in 22. I'm not saying they're going to be the 22 team. I don't think they are. But that Loyola game in week 2, they just detonated them, and it was like, wow, like they were on it early. Even in 21, it was that all Big Ten kind of schedule, which made it difficult to see. But they came out there and beat Michigan by like 11, and then they beat Penn State by 6. Hopkins like they were on it immediately. Do we see that now? Like, do we see kind of like the expectations for this team are really high? Do they pop like off the page? I kind of think maybe not, just because they've had different. I don't know to what degree would they think this team's starting lineup is going to be, how often they've actually seen it in practice. Because Eric Spanos missed parts of the fall with an injury. And I don't know how much I think a lot of like the scrimmages and things like that were just kind of getting him back to health. I think they've had some other guys out with injuries as well. I just kind of wonder how much of what, again, like they picture that offense is going to look like, and maybe at other places as well. How much of that have they seen? And so is this game, and maybe even the like first couple weeks, like just about like, all right, let's just go with what we kind of know we have and go from there. As opposed, and maybe we'll see the real kind of idea of what that offense is going to be in a couple, like more towards the end of the year. Do they maybe not bring as many? Because I think there's ways they could really hurt teams' offense just with the versatility they could have. But I wonder how much of that we see, and if it's more just like, let's just get out there, do our thing, pass the ball well, don't turn it over, and kind of get out of there. Just because I think they have had, some more injuries maybe than they've been, accustomed to early in the year. But again, like on paper, the potential for this team is really, really high. And usually when Maryland has that, it kind of comes off the page pretty darn early. So that's, that kind of general idea of like kind of what I have in kind of my head about these teams. I'm interested to see how much of that we actually like plays out this weekend.
You may have the luxury of like being able to experiment if you're Tillman, because you're coming in with, as you were like shouted out, IL units. Maryland, maybe Ohio State would have been there if Van Buren didn't get injured as number 1. But Maryland's like at least ranked from IL's like unit standard for defense as the number 1 defense of this season. Obviously, Robo like has been a starter before, but now like the presumptive season-long starter. Obviously it's a little bit different with Big Mac back there. But I think Will Schaller, who you obviously know a lot more in terms of like his, but like I think one of he's the best defenseman, if not the best in the country. And maybe that will allow them to be able to like experiment with offense. And I think because like, forgive me, I'm blanking on the Vermont face-off guy that transferred over.
Henry Dodge.
If Henry plays the Luke Weirman role, and at the beginning of this, you said you're not the one saying that this is the 2022 Maryland team. I was like, I'm the one saying it, because I was like, the transfers, the potential, like having, a really, really like difference maker at face-off. Like, I kind of just like feel like, good defensive unit. Like, maybe it just kind of reminded me a little bit, or at least echoed of that 2022 team in terms of, Spanos taking the leap that Logan did. So like maybe like they have the pieces that can maybe mimic what the 2022 team did. So that's why for me, I was like, yeah, I could see maybe 11-5, and not like to just Loyola, but just like, oh, maybe this defense really is that. And maybe Maryland doesn't pop off for like 15, 16 to 18 goals or whatever. But, you know, they have that luxury of being able to like test the waters out. Like, all right, what do we like here? Like maybe moving things around. And obviously with the new faces and transfers, then that's going to take some getting used to, and not being able to play last weekend with Richard. We kind of said, you know, you're all geared up to play the Spiders and stuff like that. You know, you lose that opportunity. So obviously going to be some differences. So like, again, I don't know, like, if they're going to just like, hit 20 on the scoreboard in terms of the offense, but I think defensively and on the face-off, they have a really good chance of like controlling the pace of play, which is what Tillman loves. And from there, you know, if the pieces work and mesh quickly as we think that they may get that pop. And then as you said, that's when you really know. Maybe this is a really big special Maryland team. If they're hitting like 15, 16 goals, defense is keeping teams like, you know, 6, 7, 8 goals or less a game, or fewer a game, then yeah, there's reason to be excited for a turf fan.
Yeah, that's things. I kind of wonder to what Tillman's conservative by nature, and that's worked. And look, it's not that he's willing to be aggressive when, you know, he has the team. I just kind of wonder if we maybe don't see that right away, just because again, I think if it's true that they kind of haven't necessarily, you know, if these the scrimmages they kind of just, you know, been taking it pretty slow and they've had guys out. I kind of wonder if that doesn't play into more just inherently him to be like, all right, let's just kind of, you know, go with kind of what we know we have, and you know, start off, you know, on the right track, as opposed to maybe really, you know, doing the things that they could, you know, pose a lot of problems for teams, with the way that they could, you know, utilize some of their offensive pieces.
If he gets if he gets a Keegan Khan, someone like at X that could really try, like that's when Maryland really opened up, like, you know, 2022, that being able to dodge and then get that skip, and then like Logan's right there, just like, you know, nail it. Like that's
And I think that's what ideally Johnson could be, along with Spanos. If you play those two guys off each other, you have a pretty potent combo because they've both been very good players, but both have kind of the last couple of years had to draw the, you know, opponent's number one pole. You can really put teams in a bind if you have to be like, you got to pick one of them, you know, and then again throw in Urksa and Lyons. Like, you know, Urksa potentially, to me, like Urksa running out of the midfield is just like the, you know, that's perfect. He doesn't have to hold the ball that long. He doesn't have to focus on, you know, like you don't have to be a big passer either. Like it can just be like fly out of the box, attack a short stick and go.
The Owen Murphy rule, my son.
I just think that's the perfect. Now, maybe he plays attack and Lyons plays midfield, which I confess I don't really. I mean, Lyons can play midfield. Like he's a shooter by, like, that's what he is. But you know, but he's a better passer and a better dodger, I think, than he's given credit for. Now, granted, with the way Maryland plays offense, like him playing midfield probably means that he'll invert and go down low and just kind of, you know, float around the, you know, X and GLE. So it might just wind up working that way anyway, where Urksa moves more towards the top and Lyons moves down low, and, you know, so that's just kind of the nature of how they run their offense. But yeah, again, they have the potential to really put teams in a bind with the options they have. I'm just, you know, interested to see how much that plays out on paper, to start. Safe, anything on any of these other games this weekend? Any other games catch your eye?
You know, I mean, obviously we said Rutgers Army, but you know, the circumstances of where they're playing is going to be, you know, Villanova, Penn State. Like Nova can always surprise every now and then, you know, just kind of ruin Penn State's day. So a little bit interested in that, but yeah, I mean, we hit the biggies that I'm really like kind of looking forward to this weekend. I mean, I guess a little bit concerned, you know, there's a Jays fan playing you know, the Hoyas, but I think it's going to be a good test for both teams, and Hopkins keeps it relatively close and wins it. You know, pretty excited for the season with Jays. Utah Duke, just because, like, you know, always have high hopes for the Utes, and you know, kind of we're talking about the Duke a lot at the preseason. So you know, one of their kind of important non-conference, and you know, they don't have many big ones, but Utah has that chance to be like that hovering 20 or you know, in the top 20 for RPI and you know, just poll ranking. So like a win here for Duke would be like, you know, a decent win, like kind of a BU win that like Syracuse had.
Yeah.
A team that's like kind of in the mix for their conference. Well, Utah definitely in the mix for their conference, you know, last year notwithstanding. But yeah, just what we talked about Duke. I'll just say I'll just own it myself. What I've talked about Duke in the non-conference schedule. That at least a lot to be wanting. Like this is a decent non-conference game. You know, in any normal regular Duke season in the past when they had, you know, more large non-conference games. You know, the Utes. It's a decent program, so kind of interested in that. Just you know, just Friday, you know, table setter for the weekend, kind of like that. So yeah, we touch on all the other big ones for the weekend that I'm really looking at.
Yeah, I think Rutgers Army is a big one. You know, Army having to like there's evident again from that first game against UMass. There's talent on that squad, and like Alberisi has recruited at a substantial enough level that you know they're going to have real pieces that are gonna hurt you. I mean, Hill Plunkett had a tremendous start right off the bat. Put up 5 goals and 2 assists. And I guess my kind of view of Army was still the floor is really high just by Alberisi and what he does and how he coaches that team. They churn out wins. They know how to get the job done throughout the regular season, and their general talent level is just ahead of most, if not all. Honestly, I would say all. Like across the board, Army has more talent than anybody else in the Patriot League. But they did lose guys at like significant kind of pieces. Pilot on the defensive side of the ball, Christian Mazer, Jackson Eicher. So to what Will Coletti at the faceoff dot, it kind of made you a little. That was kind of where I think is like if you took that high level first team All American type level talent off the board, did that maybe bring them back to the pack a little bit? And I don't know that we know for sure any other way against UMass, but I think we'll know more this week when they play Rutgers. But it's hard not if you're on not to feel encouraged about like, all right, well we lose Jackson Eicher. Hill Plunkett comes in as our big ex-attackman and has 5 goals and 2 assists. We lose Will Coletti at the faceoff dot. All right, Robert Simone goes 12 of 19 and Caleb Caldwell goes 4 for 4. We win 16 of 23 faceoffs. You've got John Sullivan back there as probably Pilot's kind of incumbent for that top long post spot. Sean Byrne is very, very good in goal. That's kind of what they brought back. If this is like the weekly test of them, is like how do they fill these kind of holes? Week 1 was a flying success. Like they got proof of concept right away. Much tougher test against Rutgers. Does that continue? And I think for Rutgers, again, some of the kind of idea of proof of concept, I need to see a little bit more depth of scoring. That was kind of what it was. I knew that they had offensive talent on this squad coming off of 2025. You had Colin Cardillo was a real, an All-American type, a borderline All-American type guy with 27 goals, 40 points. Jijiello, they had 9 guys last year with 10 plus points. but you needed to see some guys really take a step up, I thought, and kind of emerge into kind of real bona fide hitters. Cardilla had 4 points, 4 goals. Colin Kelly, 2 goals. Colin Ziller, so it was the Colin show. After that, no one else really kind of popped off. I need to see some more of these guys step up and play prominent kind of roles. I think they need. Cardilla's a really good player. Who else is it behind him that can play a part? Face-offs for Rutgers weren't great. 10 of 24. That's been a weakness for them in the Big Ten. When you consider the overall strength of the Big Ten face-off wise, which looks like it probably too. Penn State's should be really good there at the dot. Maryland should be really good at the dot. Hopkins was great last year. They were good against Robert Morris. How much that will continue? Robert Morris was a good face-off team a year ago, though, so maybe an encouraging sign for Hopkins. Ohio State's pretty good. So Stoller played well. It's there were parts of Rutgers against Jacksonville that did what you would have expected, but if I'm going to be optimistic about this team, I think I need to see some more guys playing prominent roles on offense, and hopefully finding some solutions to face off that. But yeah, it's a big game. It's Rutgers. Their second biggest. They play Princeton, so that's obviously their biggest non-contest. But after this, it's Stony Brook, Villanova, LIU, Hofstra. All games you'd expect to win and be favored pretty seriously. And where for Army, it's part of a pretty significant 3-week stretch. Rutgers, Yale, and Michigan. All pretty significant games for this team. So, and Rutgers and Piscataway, they play Yale at home, and then Michigan. I think you could. Look, when this team's always usually a hot starter, and if they can beat Rutgers, go to Rutgers and get that win. Granted, again, no fans. Then they come back and they play Yale at home in Yale's first game. Michigan and neutral. You begin to start to see where this ball could get rolling if they could pick up this win, similar to how it has in the past. All right, so last thing, the Bobby Van Buren injury. This is hard. I mean, it's pretty brutal. I don't want to say devastating. I mean, devastating emotionally for sure, morale wise. Losing your leader, your best player. And a guy who has been so instrumental to kind of establishing that defense. It's tough. It's just I would say this. I think that. You tell me if you agree. I don't think there's a more impactful position on the field. If you lose this guy on your team, it's not any more impactful to me than any other position than losing your number one long pole. I think especially if you have a guy like him who's an All-American who you trust that you can put him up against the opposing team's best player and shut him down. I think that's the most valuable piece on the entire field. I just don't. I think maybe goalie. Maybe you have a great goalie and you lose a great goalie. Maybe that's the other one, but I don't think there's any other position on the field I view as so kind of singularly impactful to a team than losing your number one long pole.
Well, I mean, I'm just thinking of some of our favorites. Maryland without Ajax. Notre Dame if they lose John Light. Some of the other big names. Line. You have people of that caliber. Rare, but also their intelligence, their ability to kind of be the general in the field. I know the goalie plays a lot of that, but the number one long pole is in that position for a reason. They're usually taking on the number one threat on the other team. They're spacing. They're making sure that everyone's in the right positions and stuff like that. So and the emotional support. Yeah, there's essentially the defensive captain. I think it's fair to say. Again, you could make an argument for the goalie, but that's kind of what we've seen. Big time defensemen on teams. The recently won championships. It's a major. Obviously you lose your number one attackman, that's going to be like equally bad. But yeah, losing the heart of your defense, like that's why that's a phrase, because it's like a pretty devastating loss. You know, it's not insurmountable, but yeah, like going into the season for their on their hopes, you know, underrated. Considered by some properly rated by this pod, pod you just did last year, but like nobody thought like Ohio State was going to fall off. If anything, it was like, yeah, there's going to be like maybe a quarterfinal run would be a step forward. You know, given they haven't had a first round win in almost a decade. But yeah, it's big. I was like, for me, kind of like Ohio State. BVB was kind of one of those, points of like strength. Caleb Fayok is also obviously big, and losing him would be huge, just given like what he's done for them last year, and we're looking forward to him to doing this year. But yeah, that's two big pillars. What do you want to lose? Your left leg or right leg? I mean, like it's like it's going to be equally bad. And I think
I think losing the left leg is worse. I think if you lose your number one attackman, I think there's ways you can work around that. Like I think you can do different things offensively to try and adjust to that. I think there's different ways you can play offensively. I don't know what your defense like has to be to. It's like, what's the defensive solution to losing your number one long pole? It's like, do you play zone? Like you can't you basically just have to find someone who can do it. Which like offensively, I feel like you could, maybe you run more offense through the midfield. Maybe you do more invert. Maybe you do more two-man games potentially if you didn't do that. Yada yada. Look, if you can win a lot of I guess if you win a lot of face-offs, it protects your defense too. But you can maybe try and push transition more. Defensively, it's like I don't. When you lose that guy, you lose the guarantee and the security of the most important thing, which is, can we stop the other team's best player? Because if you take the other team's best player off the chessboard, it makes them playing offense so much more harder. Well, playing offense becomes so much more harder for them. And if you lose that,
first team defenseman All-America last year for IL, Schaller, Light, Van Buren. Like, which one of those? Like, you can't lose one of those guys. You know what I'm saying? Like, point. Like, that's why they like, and that's such a great defense. It's like in large part because of those pieces. So it's like Pilati as well and Army last year. Like, if you lose any one of those guys for the entire season, it's going to be an issue. Like, because it's hard to replace the talent, hard to replace the leadership, the intelligence. Knowing like especially BBBs with experience, like this is somebody that emotional support, like team centers on is one of the team leaders. So yeah, it's huge. It's no underselling it.
Like if the other team's best player is now a weapon to impact the game, score or pass, and you have to start slide. Like that's the thing with these guys. You never have to slide to them ever. If you now have to start sliding to the other team's best player, that's bad. Like it's not that you can't be a good defense, but it basically limits your ceiling to such a significant degree. Now, am I saying that Ohio State is automatically in this position? No. I think Ohio State is more uniquely equipped probably to deal with this than most other teams. You still have Fayok back there, which is a big help. I think it's interesting to what degree they go, because I wonder if you're kind of like Cullen Brown is also an All-American defenseman.
Yeah.
And he's also excellent. But what makes Cullen Brown great is that Cullen Brown is like a free safety back there. Like he's the help defender. He's the air traffic controller. He's causing havoc everywhere. Like he's a really unique player. And that's what makes him great. And that's what makes their defense, in addition to having Van Buren so effective, is being able to have a guy like him. If you make him your number one pole, he might be the most equipped guy for you back there to do that. If you with his skill, I mean, with just his overall ability. But if you make him do that, you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, because then you lose what he does you lose the havoc that he brings, because he can't do that while also guarding the other team's best player. And so, that's more tough. On the other hand, if you don't use him, you're putting your trust in maybe like your number 3 lunk with someone else who just might not be as good. Kyle Foster's a pretty good defender. I think your best shot is probably just be like, you're our guy now. You got to step up and get it done. I don't think you can lose. I think if you lose Van Buren and you lose what Cullen Brown brings is that like havoc guy, I think you have a completely different defense now. Like the crux of your defense is different. I think you're changing too much if you ask Brown to play that Van Buren role. And so I think you just got to ask a guy like Kyle Foster or someone else, be like, you got to step up and be the guy. And
Johnny Cool. I mean, I love the name.
Yeah, like it's just somebody's got to step up in that role. And if they can't do it, well, we're fucked. Like, it's not good. If they can do it, then all right. So yeah, it's that's a tough blow to have. And look, it gets back to what we talked about with this team, which is that how do they take that step? That's what they've been talking about, as a program, is taking the step from, from where they were to getting to the Final Four or something like that. You got to get better than they were last year. They were really dang good last year, and it wasn't enough. How do they get better? One thing you at least could hang your hat on, you felt like you could hang your hat on, was, well, we're going to be great defensively again. I think this takes some shine off of that. It's not that they won't still. I think they'll still be good defensively. I don't think they're going to suddenly become a bad defense. But it does make it a lot harder to still be a top 5 defense in the country. And that means that you kind of got to compensate somewhere else. You got to be better on faceoffs. You got to be you got to become a really great offense. If you can't maintain this level, which I just don't know how you do. I think you can adequately, compensate for this loss. But can you be as good as you were? That feels. I mean, if he could be, he wouldn't be who he is. He wouldn't be the great player he was. So it's a tough one. Yeah, I think just even a team like this, who is more prepared than most to handle it. Yeah, I think like losing your best offensive player, your best attackman, that's terrible. There's other things I think you can do. Offensively gives you options. Defense, it all starts with your goalie and that guy who can you trust to take the other team's best player off the field. There's not a lot of solutions to losing a guy like that.
No. Got to grade him in the aggregate.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah. All right, Safe. I think that's all.
Absolutely. It's a great show. Can't wait for Power Hour. Yeah. In transit, on Impact.
Yeah. As it stands, looks like we're still on for Saturday. If something changes and all these games get moved up to Friday, maybe we'll, adjust course. But as it stands, we're still looking at probably Saturday evening or so for our first Power Hour of the year. We're waiting for it. We got pushed back last weekend, and excited to get after it this weekend. All right. You can find this show when it goes up wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, wherever. Do it now. This podcast will also go up digitally on YouTube. So the video version of this will go up on YouTube. Remember the Power Hour. You find us on YouTube, youtube.com/Lacrosse Commission. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Give a like on this video when it goes up if you'd like to watch it there. And join us every Saturday throughout the season on YouTube. We send out the link. It's a great time. We got a lot of people. We got an active listenership in the chat who chimes along with us, and we are very excited for hopefully really get started with a true weekend of lacrosse this coming Friday and Saturday, and be off and running from there. All right, stay warm out there as the cold comes. Stay hydrated. Thank you much for president.